Hello one and all, this is Soulful Lordy, James Bullock, once again with another video game first impressions. This time around, Dying Light 2 for the PlayStation 4, PlayStation 5, Xbox One, Xbox Series X and S, and PC, and tentatively the Nintendo Switch. Dying Light 2 is of course the sequel to the 2015 zombie action parkour adventure Dying Light. They really added a different element to the genre by focusing on traversal. Dying Light 2 returns here with a lot of the implementations from the original Dying Light as per the norm when it comes to a sequel, just modified and more importantly improved upon. The parkour system is just as remarkable at the beginning of the game as it is a few hours in. Thanks to a moment in the story that happens very early on, the stamina system that is the root of the parkour is greatly reduced. This ties into the fact that, just like in Dying Light 1, this game has a day and night cycle. And during the nighttime it becomes a lot more dangerous, not just because of the enemies, specifically the howlers that alert other enemies to your presence and begins this implementation known as the chase sequence, where you have to run from enemies that are just, of course, chasing you and hopefully get to a safe house or outrun them. It's very hard to really outrun them, so the best option is usually trying to find a safe spot. Another problem when it comes to traveling as the protagonist Aiden Caldwell is the fact that thanks to what happens to you that reduces your stamina, it also reduces your immunity to be around the adversaries and the enemies and just the overall nature during the nighttime hours. So as you're moving throughout areas during the night or going into darkened areas, your immunity to the virus starts to weaken and you have to use either items or getting out of that area to revitalize your immunity. Another way of doing that, of course, is to get into the UV lights that protect you against these zombies that cannot stand the UV lights. The stealth system has been greatly improved upon compared to the first one. You can utilize it against those grunts and human enemies, but there are areas where the adversaries, specifically the zombies, are actually sleeping in buildings during the daytime. So it becomes very advantageous to go into those buildings at night because they're removed from the areas. But if you do stumble upon them during the daytime, you can utilize stealth takedowns and choke them out or break their necks. But this also ties into the fact that this game does have a leveling system that the original didn't. And depending on the enemy levels, some enemies of course will be harder to take down, to kill, and in terms of trying to take down a zombie by stealth, it will become impossible because the enemy will break free and even attack you. Combat is very similar to what it was in the original Dying Light, and when it comes to attacking zombies, usually the best way to do it is to try to chop off their heads or bash them in the heads, but you can also clip their legs out and disable them. You can chop off arms. It's actually very intuitive and very disturbing, very disgusting. The graphics really make this look like a horrific experience. But it's easy to get surrounded, of course, and if you are, you will be overwhelmed and taken down very easily. The weapon modification system returns as well, so if you wanted to add, say, electricity to a sword, you can do so and cause this long-range static effect that electrifies enemies and stuns them for potentially decapitation. You can set them on fire, you can poison them, that causes them to kind of be stunned and start vomiting. Unlike the original Dying Light, where this game takes place 15 years after the original story and society has pretty much devolved back to more of a medieval time, guns don't exist, so all you really have are melee weapons or long-range weapons like a crossbow. Of course, modification comes with the usage of items that you find while exploring, and a big thing about this game is exploration. As I noted, when it comes to the nighttime travel, actually the rewards are grander because there are areas that you can only really access during the night because the zombies have moved out of that area. And if you can enter that area and pretty much scour it for everything it has, then you will come away with a lot of craftable items that you can utilize either to modify weapons or even help your gear. And that's one thing that's a big part about this game, is the fact that this game also has gear where you can add to your character's defenses, your stamina boost. All of this ties into the 3 skill trees that are available as well, with 2 of the skill trees being more connected than the other, combat and parkour. Now the skill points associated with these skill trees only come with actually doing those actions. So when you are in a battle, when you slay an enemy, be it a human or a zombie, that will give you experience points that will be utilized to add to your skill points that are connected solely to combat. And the same thing when it comes to the parkour section. The more parkour you do, especially at nighttime when you get double rewards, is the only route to get skill points for the parkour tree. Now the other skill tree are the inhibitors. Now these allow for you to boost your overall stamina, your health, and your immunity. But they're only available in these crates that are in specific sections. Some sections are just wide open that you may stumble upon when you're moving around the area. And then there are other sections where they're only available either at night or when defeating a certain enemy. These inhibitors are rare, but they also are great when it comes to just evolving Aiden, and adds a nice collectible to an overall very hefty game when it comes to just exploration in general. Going back to the combat, when it comes to some of the flaws, there is definitely the rudimentary nature of the same combat system over and over again. The first feeling of combat when it comes to taking on human enemies is the same that it is 4 or 5 hours deep. There's no real deep evolution in terms of the combat, even when you gain new skills. The root system of it is parrying by hitting the block button at the right time, trying to jump over an enemy and drop kicking the enemy behind them, and simply trying to survive by dodging. There are times when this game can be janky and you will actually miss a vault kick by sailing over the person that you're aiming for, or most importantly, when it comes to fighting a massive amount of enemies, you'll be hit off screen without the game giving you this indicator that an incoming attack is coming your way that you can be able to dodge before you're hit. And this can be very detrimental, especially early in the game when you don't have that much health. The parkour system mostly works well, though there are times where Aiden will grab onto things or actually let go of things and go in the opposite direction of where the player dictates. He has a very odd nature of sliding down the sides of roofs. From a narrative perspective thus far, it's not that remarkable. It's really a story based on the idea of course, these warring factions that are trying to get as much as they can for their own group, and of course they run into issues with each other that Aiden may or may not be able to solve. There are a plethora of side quests that pop up very early that really showcase the level of bad voice acting and some stoic, stiff nature that was seen in the original Dying Light that I thought they may be able to iron out with this one, but of course they really didn't. Technically, the game is very good. I did have a few frame rate drops here and there playing it on the PlayStation 5. I haven't had any major crashes or game-breaking bugs that cause missions to fall apart, though there are issues with hit detection, as I noted with the combat. Another big issue from a technical aspect that I have with this game is the fact that there are no manual saves. There are no ability to hard save. So if you're playing this game, make sure you do a backup save. It's strictly auto save. If something goes wrong, you won't lose too much progress, or if you have a game-breaking glitch or something, it won't ruin your experience. Overall, Dying Light 2 is a lot better than it could have been, but it still feels like just the evolution of Dying Light, which was a really good game. It just doesn't feel as revolutionary as the original game did at the start of the last generation of gaming consoles. Still, with that being stated, it's a very good game. If you enjoyed the original Dying Light, you will definitely love this one, including some of the new implementations, some of the adjustments. I didn't necessarily have a chance to really play the co-op because when I tried to, I really couldn't get a game started, or I really had no opportunity to find a person that would stick around long enough. The biggest thing about the co-op is the fact that it is a drop-in, drop-out system, very similar to Far Cry. So if you're dropping into someone else's game, you are jumping into where they have progressed, and nothing really saves outside of maybe getting collectibles. But if they drop into your game, it's the same thing. So it's really not the best strategy if you're trying to play through the story, unless you're playing through with a dedicated friend or someone that wants to play through it all the way together. So there you have it. This has been Soulful Lordy, James Bullock, once again with another video game first impressions. Dying Light 2 for the PlayStation 4, PlayStation 5, Xbox One, Xbox Series X and S, and PC, with a tentative release for the Nintendo Switch in the near future. Now, if you don't mind, I have this gigantic beast of a thing that I must take down if I want to get another inhibitor. And if I do die at night, that means I lose all my XP, so I can't let this happen. And I have to make these zombies moan in defeat as I scream out, "Oh lordy!"